you very much for being here, and I want to welcome everybody. You never thought that you would see a crowd like this to welcome a guy from Missouri at KU. But as much as we don't like Missouri, we like Jason Kander, and I'm really glad to have him here. Many of you have probably watched his career from across the border here, and I have as well. I've gotten to know him through the years, and he's truly an outstanding public servant, a progressive Secretary of State in Missouri. Imagine that, a Secretary of State that actually wants to help people vote and encourage them to vote, something we're unfamiliar with in Kansas. But I'm going to let him make some comments in just a little bit, but I want to touch on just a few important issues. I'm running for Congress because I, like so many Americans right now, are just really fed up with what's going on in Washington. We have a Congress right now that is just disconnected from the American people. They're unresponsive to us. And you talk to people all across eastern Kansas, or really anywhere in America, and they look at the U.S. Congress and they're just wondering, do these people even listen to me anymore? Do they care about me? We've had two major policy debates over the last year and a half in this country, healthcare and taxes. I bet you if we go around this room, virtually everybody has got an opinion about these issues. And when we're having these big debates, where are our members of Congress? They are running away from us. They didn't want to have town hall meetings. They didn't want to listen to what their constituents had to say because they think that they've got all the answers, and they're just going to be listening to the people who've been funding their political campaigns. And that's why we have a dysfunctional and a broken Congress, and we have to fix it, and we've got to fix it here in 2018. I think there's some really important issues that are important issues to many Kansans, many Americans, but especially to people who are here at the university and the students and the future leaders of our country that we need to be talking more about. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have this event here today. When I went to KU just a few years ago, I paid $650 for a semester of tuition. You could take as many hours as you wanted. Now, $650 probably buys you a credit hour today. And it is absolutely alarming what is going on with college tuition costs right now. And literally people are being priced out of the ability to get a college education. And that's got to change. That's got to change. And so many of you are going to leave this university with mountains of student loan debt that you're still trying to pay. And I know that firsthand. That my wife and I are here in our mid-40s are still paying student loans, and at the same time we're trying to save some money for our 8-year-old to go to college. And I'm frightened as a parent, quite frankly, as to what college is going to cost in 10 years down the road, and when we just have tuition increase after tuition increase after tuition increase. And right now we got a Secretary of Education in Washington, D.C. Who is doing all that she can to help the student loan industry take advantage of all of you. And that is something that's got to change. All we have to do, I also remember when I was a kid here, there was snow on the ground for most of the winter. There's no doubt about the fact that climate change is happening. It's occurring at an alarming rate. And the United States ought to be leading the world in how we are going to combat climate change. And instead, President Trump pulls us out of the Paris Climate Accord. We are the only country other than Nicaragua that is not part of that climate accord. And by the way, the Nicaraguans don't think it's strong enough. We can't lead from behind if we are going to do what we have to do to make sure that we combat climate change and do it in a meaningful way. We got an economy right now that frankly I think is really working for the people at the very top of the income scale. And that's why the gap between the middle class and the rich is just getting wider and wider. And we need an economy that's going to be working for working people. We need an economy that is going to be creating jobs for people who are coming out of college so they can have an opportunity to be able to provide for your families and for your children that you're going to be having down the road. But in order for us to address these issues and address the many other issues that we could go on and on again, that we need action in Washington, D.C., we have to change the people that are in Washington, D.C. And it starts by participating in the election process. It starts by getting involved and getting out there to vote. You know, I love it when election day rolls around because I love to go into that ballot booth and cast my vote. It's something that I look forward to, and it's something that I try to remember all of the people who have come before us who have fought and advocated tirelessly to make sure that our voting rights are there. And if we are able to in mass participate in our democracy, it's our democracy. It's not somebody else's, it's our democracy. And we've got to protect it, and we've got to participate in the voting process if we're going to be willing to protect it in the way that we need to. And I am very proud to have one of America's leading advocates with us here today. Jason Kander started Let America Vote, and he has brought that message all across this country and trying to figure out ways in which we can get more people to participate, to vote, and to be an advocate for protecting our democracy. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Jason Kander, who, by the way, is running for to be the mayor of Kansas City, and I think he'll be an outstanding mayor for Kansas City. So, Jason.
Thank you, Paul. How y'all doing?
Good.
Seriously, you're here, you're not in class, how y'all doing?
Great.
Yeah, that was pretty much exactly the same. But I'm not going to try to do it again. Look, I am excited to be here for Paul Davis. If you want to know how much I like Paul Davis, I came to KU. That's how much I like him. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go to KU. That's how great I think he would be in Congress. I mean, look, I was in the state legislature in Missouri during part of the time that he was in the state legislature here, and so we were watching across the state line as there was this guy who was, progressive and was out there and was fighting for really good things and also getting things done. And sometimes we were like, how about that? That's pretty cool, because maybe we had a little bit of dysfunction happening on our side. And he was getting stuff done, and so I've admired him for a while. I've admired him as a problem solver, and now I admire all of you, because you're here, I presume, to help him. And there's a lot of people in here who, are younger. I won't say like me, because I'm getting to a point where I can't really get away with that anymore. I'm actually technically a member of the millennial generation. I think it's by like 5 months. I'm not sure. I'm a senior millennial. I may be the grayest millennial in here. But I am technically a millennial. So where I wanted to start is what it is that people tend to say about our generation. This is the audience participation part of this event. Raise your hand, this is sort of a for millennials only question, but raise your hand if you've heard some of the negative stereotypes. You want to volunteer one, yeah.
Okay, I'm actually also Generation Z, but I hear that we're lazy and entitled.
Okay, see, we don't even have to go to more than one person because you said that. Okay, great, that's the word I was looking for, is entitled, right? That's what you hear over and over and over again, is that, well, the millennial generation is entitled, and then they talk about being on your phone, and what they're really talking about more than anything is they're saying millennial generation, Generation Z, they're saying that it's a group of people who they're upset, when people say this, they're upset that this is a generation that wants to have their day job, what they do between 9 and 5, positively reflect upon who they believe they are as a person. That they want to do things that they think make the world a better place. And people refer to that as entitlement. Do y'all think that that's a sense of entitlement? No. Not either. I think, yeah, somebody's been to one of these before. I think that is actually just called patriotism. I think that's what that is when you are interested in trying to make your community, your state, your country a better place, whether it's between 9 and 5 or after work or at school or whatever, that is patriotism. And it's something to be admired. So I appreciate that you're all here, but this is only the first step of it. It's really only the first step. Look, I'm here because I like Paul Davis. I'm also here because I want to see somebody like Paul Davis elected. Look, I think he is somebody who believes in caring about people even if he doesn't know them personally. Like we were back here talking before we walked out here, we were talking about healthcare. He wasn't talking about it as it's a campaign issue. He's talking about it as how it affects people in this community. That's honestly, by the way, what it is to be a Democrat. It's just to give a damn about people, whether you personally know them or not. And I'm proud to be somebody who cares about folks, whether I personally know them or not. And I think that you are too. I'll tell you a quick story about that. So about 60 years ago, my grandfather moved into a neighborhood in Kansas City that previously families like ours, Jewish families, were not allowed to live in. There used to be these racially restrictive covenants in Kansas City. They said, Jewish families, black families, they weren't allowed to live in these neighborhoods. So the Supreme Court acted, this was struck down, and so the Kander family moved into this neighborhood. So my grandfather, we all call him Pop, his name's Ed Kander, he's 94 now, but we call him Pop. Pop moves the family into this neighborhood, and what happened right away is that he gets drafted sort of into becoming the president of the neighborhood association. Like everybody says, you're the guy now. And he said that was a pretty easy job because the only thing that the president of the neighborhood association actually had to do was coach the neighborhood baseball team. He said, super easy job. He said the only hard part was they didn't have a kid who could play shortstop, so he was always asking around about that. Otherwise, really easy, right? You get to the end of that summer, and one of the families in the neighborhood moves out of their home, turns it into a boarding house, an unlicensed hotel. So everybody in the neighborhood goes to President Pop, and they say, this is no good, you gotta go to court. He was not a lawyer, but they say, you gotta go to court, and you gotta get this shut down, right? So Pop does, and the day that they're gonna have the hearing, the lawyer for the other side comes to him and threatens him. And says, look, you can go forward with this if you want, but you should know that my client has already identified a black family, and they're gonna sell their home to that black family, and they're gonna move into your neighborhood. And Pop didn't skip a beat, he said, that's fine. Do you happen to know if that family has a kid who can play shortstop? I like that story because what that story is it's about the two different kinds of people in this world, right? When the different kinds of people who have had success and then climb up and say, well, I've had some success, I must have done it all on my own, and they pull the ladder up behind them. And then there's the other kind of people who have had some success and they say, you know what, I gotta make sure that I find some more ladders up here and lower them. That we don't build walls to keep out people who haven't had as much success as us. We're not trying to do that. That's not what we're about. We're about trying to make sure that as many Americans as possible can have success because that means that we're all going to do a lot better. That's why you're here. Raise your hand if at some point in the last year and a half you have had a conversation with your friends that amounts to you asking, how long is this guy going to be in office? Be honest, all right? Pretty much all of you? Okay. Okay, every minute of the day, she says. Look, you're here, and people are encouraging you to vote. That's largely what this event is about. It's about getting out the vote. But I want to encourage you to do a little bit more than that, all right? Because if the sum total of your political engagement is that conversation, how long is this person going to be in office? Then you are setting yourself up for every morning when you wake up and that person is still in office. It's November 9th of 2016 all over again. That's the position that you're putting yourself in for your mental health. The best thing you can do to combat that, to feel better, is to get out and to knock on doors, to make phone calls, and not just vote, but get everybody else to vote too. Because here's a little secret for you, is that everybody's talking about this question of, is there going to be a blue wave? Forget about waves for a second. A wave is not a weather event. Right? You can't turn on, I'm sure you're all watching the Kansas City News, so I use Gary Lezak, Brian Busby. You can't turn on local stations and see Gary Lezak and Brian Busby talking about, well, there's going to be this enthusiasm coming in from this direction. It's going to rain down people who are going to vote. That's not how it works. You build it. If you want a wave that is about progress, you've got to go out and you've got to build it. That's what you've got to do. It's not enough just to go out and vote. You've got to talk to all of your friends, your classmates, everybody around you. You've got to tell them why you're voting. Not just that you're voting. You've got to tell them the story as to why you're passionate enough to do it. Because your passion is persuasive. Go back to where I started these remarks. People are counting on you not just to stay home, but they're counting on you to not care enough to have awkward conversations with your friends and your classmates, to tell them why you're passionate enough to do this. They are counting on your inaction. We have an opportunity to prove to them that that is not an accurate depiction of this generation. Look, I'll go back to where I started. It is about patriotism. You are here because you're patriots. You want to help Paul Davis because you're patriots. and because you understand that patriotism is not about making everybody stand and salute the flag. Patriotism is about making this a country where everybody wants to. So I hope you'll put in the time to do that. Thank you very much. Make sure you actually do it. I think Paul's going to talk to you about what you can specifically do to make that happen, right? Let's give him another round of applause.
I want to conclude with just a couple of stories here. About 25 years ago, I came to a meeting much like this in this union, and it was the first political meeting I'd really ever been to. And at the end of that meeting, they said, we want you to get involved. We want you to come out and do a little bit of work. I will tell you also that the speaker that they had at that meeting was not very good. So I'm hoping that we've given you a little bit more inspiration than I got that night. But so that following Saturday, I went out and started knocking on some doors. And I went out the next Saturday. And I went out the next Saturday. And 25 years later, I am still out knocking on doors. And that's what it takes. That's what we've got to do in order to win this election. Because there's a ton of money that's being spent against us. If you turn on your TV, you'll see these ads from the Congressional Leadership Fund. Well, the Congressional Leadership Fund is funded by billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires that don't live here. There's a guy named Sheldon Adelson. He lives in Las Vegas. He gave me $30 million. And when that happens, it's your voices, it's our voices that are getting drowned out. And that's one of the reasons why I want to go to Washington to reform our campaign finance system so we get rid of all this dark money. But they're going to spend a huge amount of money. Sheldon Adelson got a tax windfall from the Trump tax plan of over $700 million, and he's just paying $30 million of it back. It's a pretty good return on investment for him if you think about it. But that's what we've got to change, and so I need your help. Big money is increasingly losing elections, and I want to see them lose another one right here in the Kansas 2nd because of people power. Because if we are out knocking on doors, if we're out making phone calls, and we are out encouraging our friends to get out there and vote and get involved, we can make a huge difference. So the second story I want to leave you with is, after I ran for governor in 2014, I was invited. I had a lot of time on my hands after that election. And a friend of mine here at KU said, "Hey, I got a class I'm teaching, and would you come up and talk to my class?" And he wanted me to talk about something that was really not about politics. It was about my experience being a student here. And I said, if we get to the end of the class and there's some more time left, I'm going to ask people about the election. And so I did that. There was about 40 students in that class, and I said, there was an election about 10 days ago, and I just want to ask you a question. How many of you voted in that election? And one hand goes up. Another hand kind of went up, and she said, well, I tried to, but there was something about this birth certificate. And I said, that's a whole other conversation. That's what I'm talking about. It's a whole other conversation there. But we can't have that happen again. We have got to be able to mobilize students, because I want to tell you, if students show up and vote, we can win elections that people didn't think that we could win. And you can wield a huge amount of power in changing this Congress and changing the direction that our country's going in right now. And we've got to make it happen. So there are people here, and if they've got Paul Davis t-shirts on, they're not hard to find, and they have clipboards in their hands. And I want you to please visit one of these folks before, and I hope you'll come visit with Jason and I. We're going to hang around here. We're going to eat some pizza. I love pizza. If there's free pizza, I'm usually there. But please sign up to help us out here, and go out and knock on some doors, and go out and make some phone calls for us, because that's what we're going to need to win this election. And most of all, please vote. Please tell all of your friends to go vote. If they're not registered to vote, they can get registered to vote really easily by going to ksvotes.org. There is a polling location right here in the Kansas Union. It's not going to be that hard. You don't have to travel very far, and they're going to make it as easy as they possibly can. So I just want to again say thank you for being here. We need your help. If you come help us, I'm going to help you, and we're going to change the Congress, and we're going to change the country, and we're going to get going in the right direction again. So thank you very much.